Hello, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond. My name is Taylor, and welcome to the playtest for Grim Trials, a brand new, quote, heavy metal action roguelike, developed by Glory Jam and published by Soft Source and Neon Doctrine. As per usual, I did get a key from Press Engine, thank you to Press Engine for that key, as well as Soft Source and Neon Doctrine. I will not let it affect my opinion of the game, or rather in this case, the playtest. Now, keep in mind it is a playtest, meaning it is not feature complete. There are things that will be either added, taken away, or modified by the time the game does go for release. So keep that in mind as you're watching this video. Also understand that I do not know what this game will be retailed at, when it does release. So I will potentially update that as soon as I find out, but that could be months or maybe even years from now. I don't know where this game is in development, but I do hope it comes out within the next year or so. I think that would be reasonable. So what is Grim Trials? Well, I would personally describe it as Hades meets something like The Binding of Isaac. What I mean by that is, starting on the Hades end, it is a, fast-paced action roguelike where you have a mix of melee and ranged weaponry. I know, very generic, but you get upgrades throughout each run given to you by different gods. And these gods can range from gods of death, such as Anubis, and others whose names escapes me at the moment, even gods of plague like Nurgle from the Warhammer universe, as well as more traditional Greek and Roman gods like Hermes. And these benefits are often, do a specific type of damage with your regular attack, or your charge attack, or your range attack, or do, damage on dash sort of thing. It's very familiar if you've played something like Hades that gives you percentage-based upgrades throughout each run. Additionally, you have different characters you can talk to in your sort of hub world that you can interact with and develop character relations with. Now, this does say there's an undead, or rather, a coming-of-age story after death. Now, I don't know what the romance mechanics would look like for this game. I have not seen them implemented yet, so I don't know if they'll be similar to Hades, where you get more information and a deeper personal connection, or if it'll make, maybe a more romantic connection there. I could not tell you. What I can tell you is it differs from Hades in many ways, one of them being the hex-based map system. So this to me reminded me of Binding of Isaac, in the sense that you can go from one room to another, and then you can go back and forth between the rooms to explore the map and find more materials or potentially secrets. There are no secrets that I've encountered. That doesn't mean there won't be any in the future. As I said, this is a hex-based system that can have, different rooms connecting on each side of that hexagon. So you have a total of 6 sides. That's a potential for, 6 different rooms to connect to that one room to really allow you to explore the map and find the boss of that area. Now, as the game stands, there's only 2 bosses present, but I believe they're going to add plenty more by the time it goes full release. Now, to break away from both of those games, actually, this game, or this playtest, has more systems. And you might be thinking, okay, I would hope so. What you described is pretty generic, and you're right. So this game has different crafting systems for equipment, as in armor, weapons, and potions. Now, from what I've seen in the trailer and from what I've played personally, these systems are not necessarily complex, but should be pretty expansive in terms of getting a lot of different materials from a lot of different enemy types that then lead you to crafting different equipment for different scenarios, and especially your potions. Your potions, to me, strike me as very contextually based, in the sense that maybe you get a potion that does more damage against certain enemy types, or gives you, a certain damage boost, but specifically, your healing potions are not provided in the world, much like Hades was, where you can, go to a room, get healing, or find a healing font. Here, you have to craft your own healing potions, meaning if you run out, you're just out until you make more. But it also means that you can take in up to a certain amount. Now, I say up to a certain amount because I once did a run with about 18 healing potions. So I don't know where the upper limit of those healing potions is going to be. I would imagine somewhere like 99, maybe for longer runs if you have to go through multiple areas. I'm really not sure, but it's an interesting system because it puts the responsibility on you to craft your healing potions and not have to worry about, am I going to find a healing font? Am I going to find a healing room? It lets you kind of take control a little more in that sense. To get more specific about the crafting, with the materials you have, you're also supposed to play a little mini game that kind of reminded me of Dispelling from Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. If you've played it, you know what I mean. But basically, it's a little mini game where you have to follow a little orb around a circle, and then you push, in my case it was A because I was on controller, when it goes over one of the nodes that's highlighted. The idea is the more nodes that you hit when crafting an item, the better quality it will become when it's finished. So the overall quality of your items is quite literally dependent on your skill in this minigame. Now I think that's a nice system given that it means you can create quite literally the quote best gear if you play the mini game properly, but it also means if you're not paying attention, you're just going to create a worse version of whatever gear you're trying to make. So it's a nice little way to say, hey, don't just craft, be a little bit more involved without getting tedious or annoying with it. In addition to that, you also have two separate skill trees. One is more for your weapons and armor to make them more efficient. So you get additional stat bonuses for your armor pieces with this more basic skill tree in my opinion. And then the other is your more classic skill tree where you're able to upgrade your critical damage, your health, your attack, things like that. So it's very different between each one because they are both percentage based, but one gives you a little more variety than the other and is less dependent on the gear you have equipped. But, you know, it really depends as to where you want to go and how you want to really customize your character. In addition to that, the different weapons aren't just, oh, different attack, you know, different types of damage, so ice, fire, poison, whatever. They do have different attack animations, different attack radiuses from what I've encountered. I only did do one successful run. Took me about an hour, and they said, hey, this is the end of the playtest, thank you for playing. And in that time, I crafted a new weapon and all new armor. The armor was the same as what you start out with, so there was no changes cosmetically, and I'm hoping that as you craft different armor, the cosmetics do change. But the weapon was different and had a very different attack pattern. So before, I had a little scythe that did quick attacks, less damage, and was more of a just kind of frontal cone. Whereas the weapon I crafted was an axe. It was much slower, but had a clear kind of frontal pattern to its attack that was more just in a column. And it really changed up how I approached enemies because, yes, it did more damage, but it was also slower and, again, more restricted in terms of that area of effect. So it changed how I played, and I really appreciated that because it means, in my head at least, that there's the possibility that you can find the weapon that you like the most and that you can use that for your playthroughs. So honestly, I think this is a really well done game. I don't know how long it's going to be, you know, it's a roguelike, right? You are meant to play it for hours and hours on end, making play after play after play, but some of them do get bogged down by overly long run cycles to try to get to that next play. So this could have a few issues, I don't know, nothing that I've encountered yet, though if I were to change two things. One would be, I think the crafting system should be compartmentalized in the sense that you should be able to kind of have drop-down menus of, okay, here's your metals category, here's your woods category, here's your, I guess, animal category, or like enemy category. So you can just kind of shorten how much material is appearing at one time on your crafting screen. I think that would be helpful for just decluttering what you're seeing in your menus. Additionally, I think that if you are going to get a God's Boon as a Grim Reaper, it should be a god related specifically to death or plague or something like that. I do understand why they had Hermes on, say, the dash mechanic, because Hermes is known for his speed, his traversal. But there are dozens, if not hundreds of gods of death or plague related to different cultures. Even if they're willing to pull in Nurgle from Warhammer, you have, quite literally, fictional gods from fictional book, movie, video game universes that you could also pull in. And I think changing them over to be just gods related to death, gods related, again, to plague, would be a great thematic change because it really focuses in on that fact that you're a Grim Reaper. You deal with death, as do they. They're probably your bosses. Anyway, those are very minor changes that I think, the first was quality of life, the second is more just, you know, it's more on point thematically that I would really love to see. With all that being said, please let me know what you think of the playtest. Again, I will link it down below. Let me know if you're able to try it out. I would love to hear your thoughts on what the game is, whether you enjoy this style of game, and kind of how it compares with the ones that are already out there. Because I know that it's a super saturated market. It's hard to stand out, but I think Grim Trials could do it. With all that being said, thank you for being here, ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond. I really appreciate it. This playtest has been officially table tested. We'll try out the game later, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!